I'm going to go ahead now and get started with some 6th century material, prophetic literature, which confronts the issues that were raised by the destruction, the final destruction of Jerusalem. What was the meaning of this event, and how could it be reconciled with the concept of Israel as God's elect? How could such tremendous evil and suffering be reconciled with the nature of God himself? This is going to be a question that will return in the next lecture when we look at the wisdom literature and the book of Job and some other texts as well as we proceed through the rest of the course. In classical terms, if God is God, then he's not good if all these terrible things happened. And if God is good, then he mustn't be all-powerful because he failed to prevent this evil. So that tends to be the dilemma, the way it's phrased. Now, Ezekiel was a priest, and he was deported in the first deportation. You'll remember there was a deportation of exiles in 597, and then the final siege and destruction and deportation of exiles in 587. Ezekiel was among the deportees of 597. He was therefore in exile in Babylon during the final destruction and the fall of Jerusalem in 587. But his priestly background and his priestly interests are clearly reflected in his prophecies. He accuses the Israelites of failing to observe cultic laws, ritual laws, and his promises for the future and his vision of a restoration we'll see center around a new temple and a restored Jerusalem and temple complex. There's a striking correspondence between Ezekiel and the priestly sources in terms of language and theme, particularly H, the holiness code. Now, the prophecies in Ezekiel, conveniently and unlike many of the other prophetic books, actually follow a fairly chronological order. So the first section of the book consists of prophecies that were before the final destruction, between 597 and 587. And then beginning in 33, it seems that we have prophecies that followed the destruction. We hear, he gets the report of the destruction, and then we see how his tone and his message changes. So in those first 24 chapters, where you have prophecies that are delivered in Babylon before the destruction, we have 3 chapters that are devoted to his call and his commission as a prophet. We see his inaugural vision. I'll come back and talk about that in a minute, as well as many other visions and symbols. Then you have from chapters 4 to 24 oracles that are condemning Judah and Israel. There are some interesting elements within this. We have the depiction of the kavod, which represents God, departing. We'll talk about that text in a minute. We also have in chapter 18 a very interesting emphasis on individual responsibility for sin. We'll come back and touch on that as well. Chapters 25 to 32 contain oracles against foreign nations, just as we have in Jeremiah and Isaiah. Throughout, Ezekiel refers to these nations as the uncircumcised. The tone here is vengeful and very gloating, and these oracles have exerted a very strong influence on the New Testament, particularly the book of Revelation. After 587, Ezekiel prophesied, and those prophecies are contained in the latter part of his book from chapters 33 to 48. So in 33 we hear of the fall of Jerusalem, and then after that, oracles of promise and hope for the future. The last chapters from chapter 40 to 48 are visions, Ezekiel's visions of the restoration, his vision of a rebuilt temple and a rebuilt Jerusalem.